Alright, so I'm not going to say this is going to be a full-fledged guide. I'm going to give a little bit of tips and things that I've kind of learned or experimented with over the time period of testing on a normal server for a couple of months. I am moving into a hardcore server now, and that way I can give a little bit more uh, experimentation, see what works when you have less loot and stuff like that. But for now, I kind of just want to maybe give a couple of tips to people that are going to play the game. Okay, so I think the first things first, when you want to build your character, I personally am a big fan of heavy strength. Now, the triple three build is fine. This works fine. If you want to just instantly have a character that is good all around in general and you don't mind about leveling things up. Personally, for myself, I have two characters, but for right now, for the most part, I'm decreasing my dexterity down, increasing strength to 4 and constitution to 4. And that's preference mainly because I don't necessarily need the extra strength early stat wise. And leveling the strength, you can get about 1 strength every 18 hours or so if you farm it. In a hardcore server, it might be worth it to just go ahead and farm it. I don't really know exactly how well it's going to work out. Constitution, I think, is very important for every character. To have 4, 4.55, something in there is pretty good. Dexterity levels up fairly quickly, so if you don't care about the stats inside of it, I wouldn't necessarily worry about it. Thievery is probably the most important thing here, but once you get to medium, you can do kill boxes semi-competently for the most part, and then it's just leveling the skill after that as much as you want. These driving skills, I think, are the most important here, because if you put in the time to get a vehicle, you want to be able to use that vehicle relatively well without having to risk dying. In a hardcore server, it's probably going to be hard for people to find me in the first place, and if you do die, you're probably not going to get your vehicle back anyway, so I don't really know if this is important or not for hardcore. And then intelligence-wise, I would say if you're more of a defensive base builder type character, I would just go for survival. This is going to help you craft all your arrows faster and stuff. It's going to save minutes of time in your gameplay throughout the whole playthrough. So, if you're not necessarily worried about getting injured all the time, this seems okay. And in a hardcore server, there's no map and anything like that, so I don't think it's the biggest deal if you don't take medical at the first. The issue is that um, if the loot spawn tables are low enough, you probably won't find enough alcohol to keep leveling up your medical, but this is pretty easy to level as well. But I would say the most time efficient thing to take is survival at the very beginning of the game. It's going to help you set up your base faster, craft all your basic weapons faster and stuff. And you need to be able to sell things and make some money at the beginning of the game to get a car and stuff like that. And then conditioning, running, and endurance. Now, for an overall general thing, especially in a hardcore server, I'm going melee weapons, fully maxed. Brawling, as much as I like having max stats, which we did before, and I leveled my melee up from 0 to advanced in, I think like 2 weeks or something. I did it for 3 days for 4 to 8 hours or something each day and got this up. So it isn't terrible, but it does take time and positioning, and you can only do it like an hour at a time before the puppets despawn. And I'm not opposed to this, but I just don't see any major drawback if you're only focusing on playing the game and you don't want to be like the strongest person ever to go for brawling. When the game's finally released, I'll probably start with brawling and level my melee skill. But this is important. The other thing I would say is rifles. Um, in most normal servers, not a big deal, but in a hardcore server, if you're not going to have access to all the materials to craft the bullets or buy as many bullets, I want to at least be able to get to medium rifles and then I can use them in base defense and stuff in fully automatic fairly competently. So I think that's pretty important. But when you choose your stats, that's all up to you. You can use a crossbow and level this up fairly quickly at the beginning of the game as well. Um, but when you look at this, just know like your strength affects your carry weight, your damage, your throwing range if you want to throw weapons, punching damage, melee damage, some of your recoil control for your rifles and stuff. It takes like 12 to 18 hours to level 1 point in strength, and that's if you're sitting there and completely focusing it. Okay, when your strength goes higher, your calorie consumption goes higher, so you're going to want a higher constitution, which lowers the calorie consumption a bit, and higher endurance lowers the calorie consumption quite a bit. So at the beginning of the game, this is going to help you out quite a lot. And in the hardcore server that I've seen so far, there isn't as many bugs and things spawning, so early game, food situation can be kind of hard. All right. Now, I'm not going to go over all the ways to level this stuff right now. I've put stuff out about leveling this, but intelligence skills, if you're interested in intelligence skills, by all means, go for whatever you want, but I think survival gives you the most time saving. The engineering gives you the most power spike, probably. Medical gives you the most well-rounded defense. This is going to help you out the most when like going into bunkers and stuff. When you get a C4, you're going to be able to heal this up a lot easier, and you're going to be healing a lot faster from like puppet damage and stuff, because the puppets right now are doing, I think, 4 times damage. It's not terrible, but it can still mess you up pretty good. And those C1s are taking quite a while to recover with no medical skill as well. And this one is going to take the longest to find the materials to level it, because you need the alcohol bottles and everything else. So debate for me between those two. You can level awareness very quickly unless you're on like a very populated server, but even then, survival is going to help you level that faster. Dexterity skills, stealth is pretty important, but it's not super necessary. If you're good enough at running around and manipulating mechs and stuff, you can definitely go without this. The puppets, that's your deal. If you want to go through puppets, there is double spawn on the hardcore servers, so it's not too bad, but it could help you, a little bit, save some ammunition or something if you want. I would still go for, motorcycling or something. Now, if you don't necessarily care about getting advanced intelligence skills, and personally, I don't really care that much about getting advanced in this. Advanced medical, I think, is the only one that I necessarily care about. I would just go 1.5, get medium for the most part. Then you can put, whatever you want in here. I'd probably lower strength down. And then do 1.5 or this. And then you can get access to, a medium medical skill would be decent, because it doesn't take very long to get any of these up. So when you're looking at a skill set that you can only get to medium, I would just take the one that takes the longest to get ready, and that would be medical. These you'll get done in like a couple of hours. This you can get done in a couple of hours. All that stuff will be set. And then thievery, if you want to go right into PvP, that's basically the best you're going to get right there. Level that up right at the beginning, or you can lower it down a couple and try to get a little bit more points in driving or something if you like. But that is up to you. I think advanced is pretty decent if you want to start a character off like this, but I would not skimp out on the conditioning pretty much at all. Now, also when deciding your character build, it can depend on where you want to build. Some people like building in specific areas, and that is necessary sometimes. But we're going to start looking at some of these things. So, animals and stuff, there's quite a bit of them that spawn down here, and you can get food and mushrooms and stuff and berries and all that from down here. If you have access to all these metal and all this, you might want to start with advanced engineering, because you have access to the supplies to upgrade your walls very quickly, and that can give you a good power spike. You know, if you're down here in the heat or up here in the cold, maybe you want a little bit higher constitution and you want a higher endurance to make stamina or whatever to increase your like water and food consumption duration up here, so you don't have to eat and drink as much because that's going to can take a lot of your time away. If you're not running very long distances and you don't necessarily care about closing the distance with melee weapons, you don't necessarily need running speed, because if you're close enough to an area to get enough money to get a vehicle, at that point you're pretty much set. And then the people's carry weight is going to be the big determining factor. Even if you have like 8 strength and 5 constitution and 5 dexterity, if you have a full kit on you, you could be running 24. So that's up to you. I will say that I have not tested all the areas for everything, but I'll kind of give you a general overview of a couple of things. Naval base does spawn quite a bit of loot. Military airfield does spawn quite a bit of loot. The city here, big one for C4 parts, clothing, and alcohol. So medical items, C4 parts, and guns. Big one here. This town right here has quite a lot of screwdriver spawns, and the city has a lot of screwdriver spawns. This town over in C1 in the middle has a good amount of screwdriver spawns, as well as this airport having a decent amount of spawns as well. In normal server, hardcore, as far as I can tell, they've reduced the loot pools by quite a lot. Factory, I haven't really been in there much. It's probably okay. This hospital, you can find tourniquets and stuff in it, but it seems kind of iffy when you go there. I don't really know what the loot drop pulls are, but it seems very kind of random. Junkyard can have a bunch of loot. That's pretty nice, but it's also usually PvP area or something. And this brick factory is pretty decent as well, but it's not anything major in this area. These small airports like Z0 Airfield and the one in A4, they can spawn parachutes and repair kits and stuff, which are easy money at the very beginning of the game. So when you're running on foot, you want to be able to locate somewhere that has a decent amount of money that you can make, and get yourself a vehicle or something pretty quickly, or some gear, whatever you want. For me, on a normal server, just running to this airfield and then running to the trader back and forth, I get 5,000-7,000 a run, but I didn't have access to very many hiking backpacks. So you're going to want to go get a hiking backpack at the trader, then go and stock up and get more and more money each time. This spawned decent gear, and then there is a bunker right here next to it, a World War II bunker. You can go to these two right here because they have two military bunkers pretty close together here if you like, but early game, just running and getting a simple loot run, that's pretty good. I think the airfield's okay. It's not really many people that I saw go there, and it was making decent money. Junkyard, you can make decent money from it, but there's quite a bit of distance between that and the trading post. The other area that I liked is B3 Castle in a normal server. You can get 800 to 1800 for a sword. You're getting like 300 to 600 for a helmet. 300, 600 for hiking boots. There's hiking bags. It's right here. You can get hiking bags. You can get normal bags, tactical bags, shotguns, bows, all that stuff here. Very good spot in the hardcore server. The loot is not nearly as good, but you can still find. In my first route, I found basically just a normal bag, and then I found a sword and 2 helmets and some ammo. Not nearly as good as it is on a regular server, because regular server you can go through there, find 4 or 5 swords, couple of helmets, couple of shotguns, and you'd be good to go. You just sit there, you get a lot of it, you get hiking bags. Okay. Now, I will say that that's pretty decent at the beginning getting loot. The cities and the airfields and stuff are kind of where you want to go towards the middle of it. Um, I think the city and this town are like the major ones for screwdrivers and stuff for me, because there's quite a lot that you can get just going back and forth in between these towns. And then the dam and the prison here in the C2 zone, I find this really good for leveling your lock picking. Because if you run from the dam to the prison, and normally I'll go from the dam here to the church, and then you can go up to this World War II bunker if you want. Prison, go back to the dam. But the main thing is that I think the dam has like 9 or 12 lockers. The prison has 13. So you're right at 20 something. And if you want to, you can throw in this town right here, which has like another 8. Altogether, there's like 30 something lockers right here in the small zone. So you go town, dam, prison, airfield, if that's what you want to do. But running up and down this mountain here takes a lot of time. So it might be better to go town, prison, dam, town, prison, dam, whatever you want to do. But I prefer just to go dam and prison. That's the highest area that I've found so far that has a lot of lockers in one area. It's pretty decent for leveling the lock picking skill up. It's decent for finding key cards, which normally have like C or B key cards over here from what I've seen. Now, getting a vehicle is very important early game if you want to get more active in the higher end tier stuff early. Okay, so when the airdrops come, an active server that I played on, most of the players were down here in this area. They like it down there, they like fighting over it, and they like the Z4 zones as well. I'm guessing there's a decent amount of loot down there. I don't play down there, so I don't know. But in the servers that I had played on before, most of the airdrops landed in these 0 zones over here in this corner and down here. Every now and then you would find one fall on this side. Now, when that happens, those are really good spots to get pretty good loot. And I'm assuming on a hardcore server, that's probably going to be one of the main places you want to go. So having a driving skill at the very beginning of the game helps out a lot with that because you're going to be able to make it to those loot drops a lot faster. But also, having that driving skill, you're going to need survival to get a compass or have a compass on you because you need to be able to get to these places. You're not going to have access to a map. And so that's going to be hard enough, let alone finding it, driving around. You need to get there as soon as it's going to land. All right, as soon as it spawns, you need to get there and see it. But this leads to the other point with the easiest vehicle to get in the game that a lot of people don't go for is airplanes. I know it's hard to store them because you have to have, places to land them. There's a good chance you can die, but there are places you can build bases to land airplanes. And the military airfield in D4 and this airport in B2 can spawn planes decently. I prefer to go to D4 because doesn't seem to be as many people trying to camp the airplanes there and stuff as compared to B2. Most of those people go into the bunker here, all of that. But once you get a plane, I would prefer, I don't know how many spawn on the map, but I think it's very important to get one. I would build somewhere over here, get a plane, park it. Once you get access to a plane, and this is going to be kind of my plan for a hardcore server, you have access to all of the traders. You can go to every trader and you can go to every airstrip and get uh, parachutes and repair kits and stuff. You can drop people off at A4 airfield. They can go to naval base. You can come pick them up at the airfield, drive them home. It's one of the fastest vehicles to get around on the map. It doesn't really stall that often. It's relatively easy to fly. It has a lot of utility. It's easy to replace. You don't need to buy it. All that stuff is very good. So highly recommend airplanes. Trying to get one, hold on to it as much as you can. They're fairly easy to shoot down though, so watch out for that. Now, this leads to the second part, which is when it comes to a solo player, one reason you might want to start with medical compared to everything else if you're not worried about base building early is that building a base in a very, very dangerous area can be very good, like even a temporary shelter. So I've built in the prison before. I put weapons and stuff in the cells. You can build a base right here on the west side where the mech patrols. Um, and it'll guard your base for you. It works pretty good. But the good thing about the prison is not a whole lot of people really go there. The loot isn't super crazy. there's a bunch of mechs that patrol this. If you put mines and stuff all on this side here and you force them to have to come through this main entrance, that's the hardest place to get in, and it can make it a lot easier for you to defend this place as a solo player. Because one of those bombs go off, it attracts the puppets, you open all the doors up to the cells and things, the puppets will rush them, and if someone's attacking you, you just shoot the mechs and they aggro everything around, and so that's fine for the most part. You can do this also in the D4 airfield, so you can find places like the mechs patrol these lines here. You can put like a temporary shelter in this bunker in the middle of them if you want. But once you find a place that's very dangerous, like even like naval base, there's people that go and they put they take over one of these buildings on this, but I wouldn't do that. When you go into naval base, everyone's telling you that essentially there's these tunnels that come up to this top part here. They say it's not worth it to go there because it's too dangerous. So if you learn how to distract the mechs or get behind them when they do that, set up a base there and get in and out, those are very easy to set up and kind of play with when you're a solo player. Otherwise, I would just hide out in the woods somewhere completely off the grid that no one would ever find. I think that's also a perfectly reasonable strategy. And then you can just move your stuff wherever. Or if you buy a vehicle, live out of your truck. You know, drive around in your vehicle, build something to kind of cover it up. You can build temporary shelters to kind of cover it a little bit. That stuff is fine. But I think it's important to have the vehicles for the most part, especially in a hardcore server, I'm thinking. But the airplane, I think, is a big one because otherwise you're going to need to be built somewhere where you can run loot to the trader to get money so you can eventually buy a car, unless you just want to completely live off the grid and steal things and lockpick, and that's up to you. So if you want to lockpick and steal everything from someone else, but it's going to be difficult on a hardcore server, there's no global chat, there's no finding people, you can hardly find your way on the map half the time, so very difficult. The loot storage, there's a few places that you can build. It's easiest just to like cut down a tree, put a chest in it, bury the chest, and let the tree grow back. You can bury chests pretty much all over. You can just put boxes wherever. Usually no one's going to find them. It's going to be very difficult to find them. But the best place that I've found to basically store loot that nobody ever looks and you can store a lot of it, and this is going to be a big tip to you, is right here on the dam. These little grooves that you see back here, these are there's gaps that go into the dam. There's like 5 or 6 of them. If you get parachutes, you can parachute off the top into the holes, and there's massive areas that you can actually store boxes and stuff. And if you want to survive at the bottom of it, you got to build a wheelbarrow, and then you jump down on the wheelbarrow and you don't take any damage. Very rare that somebody's going to try and do that, and then they're going to have a parachute on top of it and have to land in the right hole. And then if they don't, they're going to die. And if they, you know, if you move the wheelbarrow or something, they're not going to be able to get in. So there's a lot of things there. Boats are also pretty good, especially if you live anywhere down here in the south or on this river, but they can be dangerous as well, so that's up to you. Locks and stuff, they're good, but if someone's really good at lockpicking, they're going to get in. Best to build your base without the need for locks. Otherwise, I'd probably just put a couple advanced locks, and then the rest of them don't really matter that much. I'd probably keep most of your mines inside your base in some sort of layered situation, because if you do that, when they get inside, it's going to kill them, then force them to exit. In a hardcore server, it might not be that important, but I think keeping all your mines where they're used for your base defense is the best. And that way they can't like take a metal detector, find your mines, stack them up on your wall, and like blow up your wall or something. Spike traps and stuff are reusable. They're good. You can bury them. Well, can't really like bury them, but you can bury a chest around them and it'll cover them up. So that works really good. Raised foundations, if you can put them on a hill, people can't jump onto the raised foundations anymore, so that's a really good base defense. Doesn't require any serious skill for base construction, so that's also a really good one. And I think that's the big gist of most of the stuff you can probably want. From what I've seen, D4 spawns a lot of military, or it spawns like a bunch of 22 rounds and shotgun rounds, which is weird. Prison can spawn a bunch of 3006 rounds and things, but most of the places on the map aren't really that big of a deal that I've seen so far. But a lot of people build down in this area. Now, I would say also that animals, I don't know how much they're going to sell on each individual server. Single player, a bear was selling for 1600, wolves were selling for like 800. Multiplayer server that I tested on, the wolves were selling for 400. I'm assuming the bear will sell for like 800 or something at that point. So you can make money off of killing animals, but you'd have to know where they spawn constantly. And the only place I really know for a good example is the C1 town. There's two wolves that spawn on this right side. There's a bear that spawns on this left side. There's two more wolves that spawn down here next to these trees. And so basically you could just stay here and slowly collect wolves and go up to the traders, sell them for like, 5, 6,000. And then somewhere up here in D1, I think it's like on this road, maybe D0, somewhere around in this area, there's a turn where there's like 3 wolf packs that spawn. That is the best spots that I've found so far. I have no idea about deer or anything like that. Boars seem to sell for less, so that's up to you. Now, wherever you build on the map, this also kind of can affect your character class if you want to level certain places, because like camouflage, there's not very many bushes or anything up in the snow areas, so that's so-so. And then if you like wearing like greens or browns, you probably don't want to be up there anyway. You know, the snow is also a lot better for like leveling skills, it seems, because it makes it more difficult. And also, the snow, you don't have to worry about water so much. So a lot of people hate the snow, but I don't think the snow is nearly as hard to survive in as everywhere else. I think it's easier to survive in the snow. It's harder to attack in the snow, I think, because if you attack and die and then you have to run back, if you don't spawn in the snow, you're gonna freeze, and then you're barely gonna have enough probably to survive the night if you have low constitution and just your spawned clothes if you spawn in the snow area. But it shouldn't be that difficult to actually find stuff here. But I think all of that's pretty decent. Um, you can block roads. Also, there's a town. So this is one example. This town right here, there's like 6, 7 buildings. You can put a flag in this, and you can claim all these houses. So that is something. When it comes to towns, I haven't tried any military bases, but if you do have the time and the survival skill and the will to do it, one example is this town over here in D2. The border is kind of wonky. You'll see, like right here, you can build right next to the town, and then it spaces out, and then it spaces way out, all the way out here. But if you put down enough flags, you could technically cover the whole town with a wall or whatever and turn that town into your town. Lock all the doors inside of it. You can build the walls up to. Hey, no biting shoes. Didn't know we are getting into that phase. It's not a toy. That's a toy. Okay. So, you can build walls up to this road here for the most part. And then, since the road is going to be in your green zone, you can place mines and traps or whatever there, and it's going to refresh every time that you pass. So you don't necessarily have to worry about your mines despawning. And then sometimes on the border, you can actually build like right next to some of these towns. Like this one, you can build right up to this corner. So if you wanted to live in a town, you couldn't build walls around it. There are ways to secure it, but technically you can do it with any town. But multiple roads is going to be multiple ways people can enter. So that is up to you. And there's only a few places that are actually single roads. However, bunkers tend to have single roads, although a lot of them are wrapped up. But like boot camp, you could Hey, you're unplugging my stuff, dog. Come on now. Like boot camp, you can probably build a wall around this whole area and then have one road in and out. Then you'd have the mechs inside and all the mines that you could put around it. And on a hardcore server, that would be pretty detrimental. But yeah, I think that's a gist of most of the things that you probably need to know. Uh, Nothing too major here. I mean, the coal mine and stuff, they're good for, farming puppets. Bunkers are good for farming puppets. Um, Cloth, things here. Coal mine has ground loot that spawns. The dam has ground loot that spawns as well. So, I mean, that's something. Um, Yeah, I guess that's pretty much the gist. It's just your builds that you need to worry about when you build. So if you want somewhere that has camo, maybe you want camouflage. It doesn't take long to level though. If you want to be stealthy and live inside of a base, put a base in there and somewhere really dangerous, you might want high stealth. If you want to just steal stuff, maybe you want high thievery. That's all going to be up to you. And hopefully that helped you out a little.